The 70s, when New Hollywood was thriving and was filled with classic movies like American Graffiti, Chinatown, The Godfather, and The Holdovers. Wait, that's not right. The Holdovers was released in 2023 and was written by David Hemmingson and directed by Alexander Payne. It's about a strict history teacher played by Paul Giamatti and a student played by Dominic Sessa, who are forced to spend Christmas break together at their boarding school. So, what does this have to do with the 70s? Well, the film is set in the 1970s and goes to great lengths to recreate the environment of 1970s New England and make the film seem like it was made in the 70s. They even go as far as including old production logos that were commonly used in the 70s in the beginning of the film. Other films in more modern age cinema, like Spotlight and The Nice Guys, are successful in establishing a 1970s setting, but clearly still use the techniques of 2010 films.
Hey. No.
How stupid do you think I am? Ever since your little visit the other day, this little baby's gonna stay right here.
The Holdovers, on the other hand, was never meant to feel like a period piece, but convinced the viewer that it came out in the same time period. The Holdovers is also unique because it uses the 70s not as an aesthetic, but just as a time and location in which the characters happen to be. So, in what way does The Holdovers create this experience of watching a movie in the 21st century, but feeling like we are watching a movie straight from the 70s? Beginning with everything that is composed in the frame, The Holdover uses all of the unmistakable styles of 1970s filmmaking, from an opening credits sequence to a dialogue of the characters.
You got kicked out of Harvard for hitting a guy with a car?
By accident. Pint of Jim Beam, please. But he broke 3 ribs, which was technically his fault because he shouldn't have been in the road.
$2, please.
Also, he shot himself, which was the greater indignity.
Here you go, killer.
The opening credits alone is a very 1970s trend, but the little details Alexander Payne added truly sells the idea that this is from the 70s. You can see closely that the font firstly fades in and is barely shaking. This is called film ride, and is an effect that happens on older movies when there is writing on the screen. Today, our technology does not allow this to happen on its own, which means Payne added this extra detail on the writing to create the film ride effect. The ending sequence also has this effect and fades in the final shot, then cuts to black, while the credits are still showing. The credits also do not scroll up but fade in and out like the beginning credits do. Since Payne did extra work for the film to look like it was from the 70s, you would assume it is filmed on a film camera instead of a digital one, but you would be wrong. The camera used was actually an ARRI Alexa Mini, a digital camera with a Panavision H series 55mm lens. This lens actually helps give the film a vintage portrait look that once again adds to the aesthetic of the 70s. There is also a film grade effect that has been put on the footage, and if you look closely, black specks that usually only appear in movies shot on film because they appear for moments of exposure. The film also uses very natural lighting and is not afraid of darkness or noise to appear in the frame. There is also something to be said about the color grading and how they use more warm dimensions than cooler ones. I think you could argue that the setting of where it's filmed and the weather outside influenced the choice of a warmer color gradient. Still, you can also tell that the 1970s very influenced the coloring since warmer color gradients were more common, and when we see media made today influenced by the 70s, most of the time it is shown with warm, bright colors. Another reason why I think Payne's decision on the creative choice of natural lighting and warm color grading is because of the nostalgic feeling that comes with it. In the 70s, the new Hollywood era encouraged young filmmakers to get out there and create artistic films. This was also a time when new actors had a chance to make it in Hollywood and show off their acting skills. Because the 70s were in a new film era, the people you saw on screen were seen more as normal-looking people and not supermodels with six-packs and perfect bodies that we see more of today. Now, don't get me wrong, the cast of the Holdovers are all very attractive people, but there is something about the cast that feels like they are from the 70s. The outfits, hairstyles, and mannerisms added to this effect, but it was deeper. It was the people themselves. They all look like famous actors and actresses from the 70s. You can tell that the casting for this film wasn't to focus on getting big names into the film, but to find the right people who matched the characters and setting of this film. If we focus on one of the stars from the Holdovers, Dominic Sessa, we can see that in the beginning credits, it says introducing Dominic Sessa, meaning this is his first film. This proves that Alexander Payne's intent wasn't to get people to watch it for the cast, but to perfectly portray a 70s film made in the modern world. The Holdovers so far has perfectly replicated a 70s film by the look of the actors and adding certain effects to the frame. But to top it off, they also use certain shots and camera movements that reminded me of the 70s. Just from the beginning, we see that the camera barely moves around and lets the surroundings and actors tell the story without causing attention to the camera work. The only time the camera really moves in the beginning is when it slowly zooms into a window with the lights on and then cuts to the inside of a window and zooms outward. I especially like this shot because the music changes when it goes from inside to outside.
Put away in the slumber of the
I also want to discuss the transitions used in the Holdovers. In most modern cinema, the most common kind of transition is usually a cut to cut, where you don't even notice a transition. However, the Holdovers use a very outdated transition, fading in between scenes. Sometimes fading transitions can feel tacky or misplaced, but whenever it was used in the Holdovers, besides it being a trend from the 70s, it also made you hold onto the last scene for a few more seconds and really emphasize whatever was happening. While watching the film, the visual effects emphasize the setting of the 1970s, but we can hear its vintage feeling even without the visuals and just by listening to the film.
By the way,
Yeah.
what eye do you aim with anyway? You know, I've been meaning to ask. When we're talking, which one should I look at? Sometimes I look at one, but then I think I'm wrong, so I look at the other.
Yes, everybody does that.
So which eye is it?
The soundtrack and sound design used in the film perfectly replicated the sound of the 70s. They did this by making the audio of the actors speak a little echoey.
Bring the young vandal here, Cherry's Jubilee.
Well, I'm afraid I can't. The dish contains brandy. Same deal with the bananas Foster.
Yeah, but doesn't the alcohol just burn off?
It's still against the rules, ma'am.
And by adding some kind of filter over the audio.
I can't allow that either.
Can we say it's his birthday?
It's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, young man. Let's get you a slice of cake or some other age-appropriate dessert.
Christ on a crutch. What kind of a fascist hash foundry are you running here?
In most modern films today, the audio is crisper and clearer, and it can even sound too crisp, which becomes unnatural. By making the audio imperfect in the Holdovers helps set the illusion of an older film. The soundtrack they used also enhanced each scene by adding a comforting and soft feeling, just like snow on the ground in Christmas time. We have asked how Alexander Payne made a modern film look and feel like a 1970s movie, but why was this important to do? I mentioned at the beginning of this video essay that any film set in the 70s doesn't go very far to make the audience feel like they are there. Most films will focus on the costume design, set design, the accents the characters have, or the cars they drive. However, the Holdovers did not only have it set in the 70s, but also used modern techniques to create the feeling that we, as the audience, are in the year 1970, watching a movie at the movies.